So well, I've been talking about this shed in the comments for a while now, and I finally got around to making the video on it. This is my neighbor's shed across the street, and I'm just gonna make a quick mention here. I've built a few of these sheds now, and there's another one I'm gonna be building next year, and it's kind of gonna be the accumulation of everything that I've learned on building these, and I'm gonna put a little bit of a nicer foundation on it. But I've seen these sheds around for a while now. I wasn't the first person in town here that thought of these. If you're worried or concerned about the durability of these sheds, they do seem to hold up pretty well. I know a lot of people ask how it seals because I'm running the tin perpendicular to the shed, and it typically seals just fine, especially if you put a little bit of a crown to it. It supports the weight of the snow fairly fine. This is actually a quite a bit larger shed than the one that I have, and this one has a bit of a flatter top than the first one that I have put up, the one that you've probably seen the video of, the most popular video that I have up for these. These hold up very well, and like I was mentioning, there were several other people. These sheds have been converted like this all over town where I live. The Shelter Logic shed, it's just the tarps don't hold up on them, and putting replacement tarps up on them is even a worse situation. So I've seen these around for a while before I even put mine up, and I can promise you that the other ones that I've seen put up didn't have as much care put into them. They probably didn't put cross braces in them, like you're going to see further on in this video, how I did in this one. And they've had, been up for 5-6 years longer than mine's been up for, and they've been doing perfectly fine. You can anchor them the traditional way with the screw anchors into the ground, the way that they come with, which is probably the way that the other people in town have anchored them down. I typically try to put them on cement blocks, or as you'll see, my neighbor here has put them on railroad ties and lag bolted them down to the railroad tie, or you can use smack pins and chains or plumber's tape, whatever you can, to make a saddle over top of the leg to anchor that down with some sort of concrete anchor into even a sidewalk block. You get each one of those legs anchored down to a sidewalk block is going to be more than enough weight to keep this down and secure. So I hope that just answers a few questions about the durability and the safety of having these. That's quite a few questions I get of is how do I keep this from moving around? What sort of foundation do I put these on, and how does it hold up to the wind and the snow? And as far as I can tell, they hold up just fine. They're actually very durable. Once you put the tin on these, they get very rigid. Then especially once you put an end wall on these, they get even better. And the cross bracing that I put in on this one, because it is so much larger and so much wider, it helps significantly, and these really stiffen up really well. My shed in the back, because I had to move it away from the fence to be able to get the tin on, when I was moving it back into position, like it was a solid box. Didn't have any deflection in it whatsoever. So we'll just kind of get into this video now, and we'll show you a little bit of what my neighbor's done here. We've kind of worked on this together. He's put a little bit of a dog run up next to his. So he's also got some overlap that you could see there. And he's going to put some siding up on this wall as well. So he's not done yet, but he did a little bit of a paint on the OSB here just so it kind of holds up until next year, or maybe even the year after, when he goes and puts siding up on this. So we left enough room past the last frame for him to be able to build a framed wall in, and then also enough room for him to get siding on this that'll match up pretty well flush to the edge of that. I'm still trying to find a way. My main concern with having too much overhang, or having any overhang whatsoever, having that tin overhang, is you've got that sharp edge there. And if at all possible, let's say you're cutting this with a grinder, even if you have nibblers or whatever you're cutting this with, then you're even going to get a much sharper edge. So we put all the factory edges on this side. That way the edge that's a bit sharper is toward the back where people will interact with it less. But we're still trying to find a way to eliminate that edge there at all. So he's going to try to put his siding on pretty well flush to that. So that's pretty much going to take away any possibility. What I'm worried about is like a kid walking up and tripping and maybe falling into that with their hand or their face or whatever. Anything can happen, and we want to try to eliminate any possibility for that whatsoever. So one of the things I was also thinking is bending it over with what would you call those? They're like flat vice grips essentially, and you could put like a little bit of a drip edge on the end there, and that'll help take care of it. Or you can do like I did on mine and take some flashing and just kind of bend it and cut it and notch it so that it kind of contours around the edge there. There's a bunch of different options. We were also talking about taking sprinkler pipe or irrigation pipe and putting that on there like a bumper kind of, and just like cutting that black landscaping sprinkler pipe like 1 inch and cutting that in half and putting that over top of that sharp edge, and then just putting some little tech screws in where the ribs are. There's a bunch of different options we can try, and there's some different things that I'm going to try. So just kind of stay tuned. I'm starting to build a lot more of these sheds. It's a great use of, I got my hands on quite a bit of this tin. This tin was all salvaged. As you'll see a little bit further in this video too, we've come up with some more creative ways of dealing with the holes. You can see all of the bolts going down the side here. That's because half of those bolts are actually, or half of those screw heads are actually bolts that we've used just to plug the holes. And I'll explain in a sec here how that works. One other thing I'll make a quick mention of is you can see that little triangle piece that I've got in here. That fence post is just sunk into the ground with some gravel. And I've taken L brackets and screwed those to the fence post. So these are just like little L plates. You can get them at Home Depot. They're like 1 inch by 1 inch, or maybe 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches by like, 1.5 inches long. And you can screw and tap those, or however you want to fasten those, into the metal pipe and also into the tin. And then that gives you something as a backing plate to screw wood into, so you can fill these gaps of these kind of nasty contours. Unfortunately, I don't have one, and I wasn't able to get a photo of one, but once you see one, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think it turned out really well. I think his dog run turned out really well. His door turned out very nice. I didn't do any of the carpentry work here. He did all the carpentry work. You can see he's got the railroad timbers there that the frames are sitting on, and then to span the gap he's used I think it's just like some 2x8s he's got here, and that gives him something for the wood framing to sit on so that it's not flopping around, and kind of gives some support to the door and everything, so it doesn't end up flexing and jamming as the weather heaves the ground and whatnot. So you can kind of see on the inside here, whenever we fasten boards to these pipes, we usually just drill through them and then use a bolt and then bolt the 2x4s lengthwise to the pipes. That's typically what I'll do when I'm framing these. I won't put the studs in lengthwise because there's really no way at that point to fasten them to the frame of the structure, that tubing there. And then when you get to the door, though, then you can turn the wood the other direction, and then you can frame the door in traditionally, right? If you kind of see what I'm saying there. He built a nice little shelf over his door. He's done a really good job maximizing his space in here. And now you can see these cross braces that I put up. And these are basically just 1x1 angle iron, or 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches angle iron. I actually got these out of a scrap bin from our local scrapyard. They were actually gauge metal that was bent in a break and thrown away because it wasn't bent properly. But it's basically just two pieces of angle iron at the end of the day. So you can go down to your local scrapyard. You can find endless amounts of angle iron laying around. You can pick it up for probably 50 cents a pound, if not less. And then you can put those in. We're going to have another look at those because those are fairly important, these cross braces here, because of this structure being so wide and so flat on top. Once we put these even with the end wall out, this added a ton of rigidity. And now he's got, you can see here he's hanging his lights from them. If you want to store things like whatever PVC piping, some light things in there, it gives you a bit more storage room. If you want to get creative and build some shelving off the sides, now at least the walls have a bit more structure to support it if you put shelving on the walls. And it'll kind of move around less in the wind too. So this one being so high and so flat, I was a little bit concerned about snow piling up on it in a freak snowstorm. It could get pretty high. Now I'm kind of showing you the bolts here. These were just 3/4 inch bolts, 3/4 inch by 1/4 inch bolts. And I used, I'm just showing you some more of the framing here. We'll take a step outside in a second, just kind of showing you how it's bolted to those posts. And then we'll show you a little bit of a close-up on the bolts that we used to plug these holes. Now on my shed, I just took black roofing tar and I plugged the holes that way. It does not look very good at all. I figure this looks quite a bit better. He's even talking about repainting the whole shed as well, because this tin, like I mentioned, was salvage. So you can see the difference in the fading here as well, where these sheets I think were overlapped underneath something. And it's just, we're trying to work with what we've got out here, and it's you can run the sheets the other direction. That's another thing people mention a lot is, well, why don't you just run the sheets the other direction? Well, it's a lot easier to run them this direction. We'll talk a little bit about that in a sec here. I'm just going to finish out on these bolts, and then we'll have a little bit of a talk about some other questions that I get pretty frequently. So these bolts, like I say, they're just 1/4 inch by 3/4 inch galvanized bolts. And then there's these little washers, and they're little wafer washers, and they've got a little cushion on the inside of them. So that'll help seal them so that water doesn't egress or ingress or whatever. You can see there is a little bit. This his shed got beat up pretty badly, just moving it around and over the years. And there was a tree next to it, and you can see there's a bit of a bow in it. We did spend a couple hours straightening it. It was a lot worse than it is now, but that was really as good as we could get it. We could have spent some more time and taken the not the cross braces, but like the lateral braces out, and a lot of those were bent and kinked and whatnot, so we could have replaced some of those, but realistically it actually looks pretty good from the street. You can't really see any of that. That was really just a bad camera angle that just kind of emphasized that. And so one of the things we'll talk here is like where I start. On my shed, I actually started on the bottom and I worked my way up. And then the top piece, I just cut to length and used it for a piece of ridge cap, essentially. But he made actually a good point when we were doing his. It was easier for me to start on the bottom and work my way up, but it actually kind of works out nicer when you start at the very top, so that all the ribs just kind of line up evenly, and then work your way down. It's a lot harder to do it that way because you're going to have to you don't have anything to really stack your sheets on. So one of the things we'll do is, like, I actually did this completely by myself. It's much easier to do with somebody, but if you have to, absolutely have to do this by yourself, I would get a couple C clamps. That'll help out quite a bit. You're gonna have to go back and forth, side to side. It's really kind of it's pretty difficult to do by yourself, especially if you're starting from the top down. But it does end up looking nicer and working out nicer if you do start out from the top and work your way down. I think we'll pretty much leave this video here. It's getting kind of late here, and I've got more videos on this coming out. And a lot of the questions I get are like, what concrete anchors I'm using. The anchors I use are 1/4 inch smack pins. They're very easy to put in. You can put them into sidewalk blocks very nicely. They'll work in shallow applications like that. If you need to, you can put 2 clamps side by side if you're worried about the plumber's tape not being strong enough or durable enough. Then just double them up. Double the thickness up, put 2 side by side if you're worried about that whole situation. Again, I've never had any problems with these whatsoever, moving around or getting banged around or any snow or anything like that. So, I'm not suggesting people go out and build these. All I'm saying is I've had a lot of luck with these, and if this is something you're interested in, this might help you out too.